Welcome to Tell This Story, the podcast that brings you the real, honest conversations about resilience, growth, and finding purpose after a life of service. I'm Doug White, a veteran, retired first responder, and author of Hiding in Plain Sight, the truth about trauma, service, and the way forward. This podcast is a platform where veterans, first responders, and their families share their stories, not just about the challenges, but about the strength it takes to overcome them. Together, we explore what it means to thrive, to lead, and to discover a way forward in the face of life's complexities. If you're here to be inspired and empowered, you're in the right place. Let's start the conversation. Welcome to Tell This Story. Today, we're honored to speak with Chief Christopher Workman, a dedicated law enforcement professional with over 23 years of experience. Chief Workman is not only the Chief of Police for the Town of Cheswold, Delaware, but he's also a powerful advocate for the mental health and well-being of the law enforcement community. Driven by a passion for supporting his fellow officers, he founded the DeepBlu Project. He also authored the book, Silence Behind the Blue Wall, Surviving the Mental Health Stigma in Police Culture. Chief Workman is also deeply involved in numerous leadership organizations, including the FBI Lead Executive Board, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and the smaller World Law Enforcement Executive Association. He's a true champion for the positive change in law enforcement. Chris, welcome to Tell This Story. Chris, I'm excited to have you here today. I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks where we had this scheduled, and I got your book, The Silence Behind the Blue Wall. And again, we've talked about my tabbing issues, so we're not going to beat that up. It's well documented in my other podcasts and some of the others I've been on. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, Doug. I thank you very much for reaching out and having me on. It's kind of strange sometimes because, you have in your podcast, which I've listened to and enjoy listening to, but I have my own, and it's weird being sometimes the guest of somebody else's. So this is only the second time I've done that, so bear with me. I'm going to try not to, I'm going to try to let you lead in the dancing part here as much as possible.
No need. Very, very informal here. As I said before, we got online here that I'm still very new at this, and I'm getting not bad. So we'll help each other. If you lead, I'll lead. Whatever, we'll figure it out.
That sounds good.
No problems here. So I went over your bio a little bit in the intro, but you want to fill in some blanks for us? How is it being the chief at Cheswold? I looked it up online and saw some of the pictures that are posted on the town's website, and I think I want to buy a vacation home. It's beautiful.
So it's a very small town just outside of the capital of Dover, Delaware. It's very low to middle income. We're not a big department, and the thing is that a lot of things that I'm into now, when people start asking me about my department, I start telling them that I only have 6 people. They look at me and go, "What?" I'm like, yeah, I have 3 full-timers and I have 3 part-timers, and I am I'm a chief in name, but I work every day. So it still takes, and I enjoy doing that. I think I've stayed my career working with smaller agencies because I enjoy being on the street. I enjoy having the opportunity to still be out in the community. But I also like doing the things that are required of me as the chief, so to speak, of the department. And, a lot of that is just keeping, just things on the rails every day and making sure that we're following the things that we need to follow. And it's given me a lot of perspective over the years, but it's also given me a lot of stress on top of that. And I think that one of the things that we talk about a lot, where I'm at in this space now, through my book and my podcast, is that's how I've kind of generated myself into the officer wellness. So after years of really bottling a lot of things up, I've had the gracious opportunity to meet some people who have helped me get through that. And that's kind of how the book and DeepBlu got started.
So that was just the catalyst, your own experience, and you figured, hey, I'm an expert in me, so why not get started, huh?
Well, I think that, as long as you're doing this and you have a great book also, and I think you're finding that out yourself as you go along in your podcast, that many of the people in this space, your authentic self and your genuine self is a story of its own. and no one can copy that story. And as long as you're telling that and you're being genuine about and authentic about what you're saying, it resonates with people. And I think other people's story have resonated with me, which helped me. And that kind of led me to look into doing the same thing. So that's where we got. That's how we kind of got here.
Yeah, no, I understand that. We mentioned his name offline before we jumped on, Jason Palomero. He was one of those for me, and there were several others. And your book, as I was thumbing through it and tabbing the pages, I started off as, yeah, okay, I understand. Yes, yes, yes. And then it got to the point after about 10 pages, I was like, yep, uh-huh. So I just dropping tabs and dropping asterisks and underlining. And I just, I've turned it into a scribble book. And it's amazing how, my military background and the office that I worked at, I mean, last I checked, like 4,300 employees. And it's a big town. It's a big county. And it's funny that even though our experiences may be different or even adjacent to one another, our physiological, emotional reactions are all very similar. It's a human condition. It's not a first responder condition or a veteran condition. It's I think it's actually one or both of those things mashing headlong into the human condition, because we are still human beings. We're moms and dads, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, and we are doing the best we can to do the jobs that we do and still mesh into society and raise our families as regular people. So I think the added of a life of service is what kind of throws us off the rails, but it's very, very similar in the ways that we react to things. And I just got every one of these tabs is a similarity that I found. It's amazing. I think it's fantastic that a chief and you say a name only, but you're still the chief. You're the chief
Right.
executive of a law enforcement agency. You have 6 souls that depend on you to make the right choices. You have an entire town that depend on you to make the right choices, along with mayors and mayor and taxpayers. But also your voice that, through this book and through the DeepBlu Project platform, being able to say chief and having, X number of years experience to be able to talk about it, your authentic self, not my truth, but the truth. Then it speaks volumes. And I hope it's setting an example that is just going to catch on like wildfire to law enforcement executives around the globe. It's necessary. I mean, people in your position using their platform and using their voice is just, it's going to make a difference. I wish that one day I'm going to have that impact. So it's pretty awesome. But tell me about the book. I mean, how did you come up with I should write a book?
So when I first started seeing, I went through a pretty, I could say through the years of doing this job and much of the stuff that I've put away, I never handled it very well. I went through them stages that everybody else does. I've been, married 3 times. I've been in first responder for over 30 years between fire and police. As we go along and you talk about the human condition for us is we're always work first. Unfortunately, we were brought up that way. Our career impacts in doesn't matter what it is. I have to relate it to being a first responder or to being a police officer, because that's what I've done. But no matter what, that generation, when you're brought up, it was career first. I have to support my family. I have to be ready to go. I can't let little things push me down. I can't let things stop me. And unfortunately for us, that continues to grow inside you. To do that for 30 plus years, and sooner or later the dam's going to burst. As much as you think you're good at it, and as much as you feel that you've dealt with it, well, everybody thought it was okay. You get divorced the first time, and then you look at it and you make excuses and you say, well, that wasn't right or that wasn't her. But you look back on it later and go, man, I was not there for the things I needed to be there for. I was not that person, whether it came out in anger, whether it came out not being there, whether it came out being supportive of my partner, because I was all about the job. And you lose things because of that. And when we talk about these things, there's not one person out there who's done this job, unfortunately. And this is very unfortunate for 30 plus years or 20 plus years. Unfortunately, can't say that. Like, I don't know how many I've met that they've all dealt with, whether it be relationship problems or alcohol problems or whatever it was that led them down that road. But our personal problem and my personal problem with that was, yeah, after a while, you fixed that problem, or you thought you did, but all you did was ignore it. You tried to run away from it. And you went right back to what you were doing before, until it
Yeah.
finally gets to that point where your life's about to fall apart. Like, everything's about, you've survived this far, but now you've hit that breaking point. You're at that wall. And when I got to that wall, I didn't know what to do. And it was probably the first time in my life I scared myself. That I did not know, as much as I tried to do other things. I tried therapy. I tried peer groups. They worked a little bit they were a short-term help to get me out of that mindset. But it didn't work for long. And I got to a point where my entire life, my marriage was getting ready to fall apart. I thought I was going to lose everything, my career, my all. It just, all that anxiety, all that build-up stuff started coming in. And I actually was at a point where I thought that if I had the opportunity, I probably would have taken my own life that day. I was outside of my house. No one was home. And I talk about this in the book. It's when I finally got to that point, and I was out in my driveway and I was just walking in circles. And I don't know how long I was out there. I couldn't tell you how long I was out there. And that's the first time I ever really had a thought that if I had a gun in my house, if I had a way, I didn't have a plan, I didn't have a note, I had none of that. I just had that feeling that if I could do something to end this right now, if I had that opportunity, would I do it? And thank God I didn't. It's going to be weird. And I say this a lot of times when I talk to people, and they look at me and go, you didn't have a gun in your house, you're a cop. I don't bring guns home. I never have. My wife does not like them. I don't keep a weapon in my house. I never have my entire career. Never kept a weapon in my house. But what kind of shook me out of it was I started really thinking about people that I had listened to prior years. So in 2021, I was at a conference, and a gentleman named Christopher Scallon was speaking at this conference. It was at the FBI LEDA conference. Chris Scallon runs an organization called Trauma Behind the Badge. They're based out of Florida. Chris is very raw. Chris tells you a story like a cop tells a story. He uses a lot of choice language, but it resonates with you. Mm-hmm. And I say that to say this because that voice was in my head that day. Chris had tried to take his life, I think, when he tells his story 3 times. And he tells a story of the last time that he tried to do it. He tells it better than me. But he is a very, his story about him being in Washington, D.C. at a top, what do you call it, ceremony. He was going to take his own life on that day, and he did not. And there were some circumstances behind it that go into that, but his voice was resonating in my head that day. Pretty much saying, like, what is going on with you? Snap out of it. Do something. Don't go down this road. And I came in the door and I made a phone call. And I made that phone call, and that phone call kind of shook me out of it, saved my life that day. And from that point forward, I had to make a decision. And that decision was, you need to start facing all of those things that you've bottled up for years, and it needs to start today. So,
yeah. In your book, the part where you were in your driveway walking in circles, I had I had to step away from the book. I put it down, and normally I don't do that unless something hits me that I want to soak in. And people who have been there understand the severity, or the I don't want to say the immediacy, but the gravity of that situation. And unfortunately, there's too many people that understand that. And it just it hit me, and I'm glad that you snapped out of it. And I felt for you when I read that, and what you were getting ready to lead into when you had to face and answer to all of those things. You refer to it in your book as cleaning out the mental closet. And, I actually, I've talked about that in the past, not in those terms, although I've heard the term before, but being intentional, looking at what your things are and moving through them. I found that through journaling, and actually through writing my book, that I had to answer to those things that I never knew bothered me. Do you want to talk about cleaning out your mental closet and just explain the steps that you took to get you there?
So the initial thing is you have to be willing to look inside yourself, all those things that we blame others for, because our natural ability is that we don't want, we take the hurt away from everybody. Like, that's our job. We never get called when it's good things. We're always mostly called when it's bad things. We're dealing with everyone else's trauma. We don't deal with ours as good as we deal with other people's. Mm-hmm. I had said for years that I'm very good at dealing with situations that aren't my own. Well, I can solve anybody's problem out on the street. I was terrible at solving my own problems, because my own problems I would just put away. So I had to actually sit there and realize and get myself into a mindset, number one. And that's what I talk about with cleaning out your mental closet first, is you have to be in that mindset that you are committed to looking at every single part of your life that you feel that has hurt others or changed others, or you have done that may have been, it could be something as far as not attending my son's stuff so much when he was a kid, and when he had high school plays and when he had everything else, but I ran to work, or when instead of being home, I was taking that extra job, or I was having these issues, or you didn't know how to deal with things or bring the things home, so you had anger issues at home and you were taking them out on your kids and your wife and your family. You had to start going back and looking at and taking responsibility for that. But on top of having that mindset of wanting to do that, one of the greatest and biggest things that I had learned through this process was you also have to learn how to forgive yourself after you look at it. Because we fester on those things. We beat ourselves up worse than anybody else could beat ourselves up.
Oh, yeah.
So having that possibility, the mindset to change, the mindset to look at what was wrong, but also having the ability to just forgive yourself and let it go. It's never going, all those things are not going to leave you. They're not going to magically disappear. They're all going to still be part of you. But you have to, once you take that mindset to learn about it and let go of them and see them for what they were and forgive yourself, because the only one holding on to it is you. No one else is holding on to that. Whatever that was back in 12, 15 years ago when something happened, that person has moved on. The only one that's holding on to it is you. The only one that's killing yourself is you. So you have to have that feeling, and that's a process, Doug. That's a process. And that's not a process that happens in one day.
No.
It's not a process that's over now. I still have things that have to pop up that I have to deal with or that I have to look at. But the portion of cleaning out your mental closet is, it's like once your closet is full, what happens when you go to open the door? Everything just falls out of it. And if you have no room to put the good things, because all of the bad things are in there, then all you are is negative. Your whole life is just negative. Everything's negative because you have no place to put the positive. And having the ability to try to do that step by step has made me change and make a total 180 about the way I outlook things on every day, just every day. I try to start my day with a mindset of today's going to be an awesome day. You know, it could be pouring down rain like it is today. I'm starting today going, it's going to be an awesome day. And it just helps that if, when you run into things, you're just not as negative. Trying to have that mindset, having the opportunity to fill your closet now that's not full of junk with good things and good things that are happening, that helps you do that so much better. And that helps me survive each day so much better. So when the bad things or the tough things come up, I know that I have the room to deal with it now.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk about by cleaning out your mental closet.
Yeah, I have found that when you're at capacity like that, you're not allowing yourself to be present for anything because you're just reactive. You're just waiting for the next call or the next thing or the next bill that needs to be paid or whatever it is that's going on at home. So even if you did go to the choir practice with the kids or the scout jamboree, you're there, but you're not. Right. You're worried about somebody walking in that you've never seen before with their hands in their pocket, or the loud sound, or the man, I've got to be on shift early tomorrow morning, or I should have taken that off-duty job today so I can pay for Christmas in 2 weeks.
Right.
Being able to do that, and you're right, man. It's not easy. I don't know how people that are still working can do it. I had to when I retired, and I tried to. I did the CBT, I did all of the stuff and, the things you're supposed to do or the things that they say you do. And of course the VA wanted to hand me handfuls of pills and until I said, no more pills. But, when I finally retired in July of 23, I was able to be still. I was no longer drinking the poison of running and gunning every day and just doing the job. And for the most part, my off ramp was a little bit longer before I retired, but I still was in it. You still had to make it to and from work. You still had to survive the day at work. So even though you have a light at the end of the tunnel, you're going to retire soon, that brings a whole new set of challenges. The transition, what's next? How do I prepare for that? How do I take police speak and make it civilian speak? How do I not look like a cop when I walk into places? So for me, that took a lot of stillness and honestly, what turned into journaling, which after a couple of iterations became the book, that I was able to look at that stuff. And I have found, just like you have, man, that when you answer to those things, like truly look at those and find out, where's my culpability in this? And the answer to that, by the way, is everywhere.
Everywhere.
It is all your fault. What you did, your reactions, your overreactions, what you did not do, you are responsible for every bit of it. And once you realize that and peel all that stuff back and own it, my experience anyway, and own it all and start to atone for it and realize when it's happening again and stopping it so you don't keep making the same mistakes. I have found a level of joy and power that I have never felt before. And I poured it out in my book. I mean, it's power. Owning every bit of your journey and saying, here it is. This is where I went wrong. This is where I went right. Don't make those mistakes. Don't get to the point where you're walking in circles in your driveway. Don't get to the point where you're sitting alone in a school parking lot. All of those things. And the power, I think that's one of the things that I really want people to understand, that once you've done that work, you can do anything. You become a more complete human being as far as I'm concerned. And then you start, you offload some of that closet stuff and you can start taking on more things. And when you don't do that, this is something that Jason Palomero said on my episode that came out just this week. He said, we're going to continue to be taught the same lessons until we learn from them. Right. So you're going to continue to make the same mistakes until you finally just say, stop. Why do I keep making the same mistake? Where's my culpability in this? So, but you're right, man, doing the work, that's not easy because you've got to tell yourself, you have to be kind to yourself, but you also have to be honest. And it's got to tear pieces of you away. At least that's been my experience. But you're richer for it.
You have to also find I think that in our business, and the tough thing that you have to realize is, and we all have to realize, the problem is, we've done this for a long time. We realized it a little late. And the reason that we're doing this now, and people like yourself and people like Jason and all the people that we speak to on our podcast, is we're trying to reach those people to go, don't wait 20 some years to learn how to deal with this. And don't fall into that group that says, oh, it's all right that you did that. We all do that. Well, it's not all right. It's not okay. And that validation, the problem is the problem with our culture. It's the problem with our police culture. Sometimes it's not good for you, because if everybody's doing it, you think it's okay.
No, it just means everybody's messed up. Everybody's wrong.
Well, and that's just it. When you walk into a place like, if I walk into a room of police officers and I'm getting ready to speak to them, I'm going, first thing I'm telling you is you're all screwed up. And you're not, you can't tell me you're not. Because I've done this job, the same job you're doing. Doesn't matter if you're in Colorado, you're in California, you're in Maine, you're in Florida. You're in Delaware, you're in Iowa. I don't care where you're at. This job takes its toll on you.
It does.
And if you don't find a way through mindset, through journaling, through exercise, through living with the portion of your life that says, it's my fault, I put myself there, then you're never going to get over that. So don't wait until, I think these podcasts, these books, the things we're writing, the things we're trying to tell you, the things that, this is the things that we've all lived. That stuff you've lived, Doug. That stuff I've lived. That stuff Jason's lived. That stuff, anybody who's out there doing this right now, they're telling you this for a reason. If you can pick up this book at 21 years old, if you're just getting on this job, please read it. And hopefully you listen to it. And hopefully you find the way to deal with these things in a manner that doesn't make it destructive for you. And you start taking responsibility for the things that occur, because they're going to happen. You're not going to stop them. The anger issues are going to happen because you're going to start putting stuff away. Mm-hmm. The stuff you're going to come home. Here's how it's going to start. You're going to come home and tell me if you've heard this story, because we've all done it, Doug. You started this job and everything is great. I love my day and I had this and I had that. And then slowly as your career goes on, you're speaking less and less about your day. You're not telling people what's going on. You're not speaking about anything that happened. Your friendship pool is now clustered into people that you only work with. Mm-hmm. Then you're trusting people less, and it's that pool gets lower. And then everybody's out to get me, and I only have these 2 people that I talk to at work all day. Like, that's how this job ends up.
Oh yeah. And if those
Don't
2 people are
that way.
No, and if those 2 people you're talking to at work, they're negative, and you get sucked in that vortex of doom, it gets even worse. And, I'll add to that. If you find yourself sitting in your PJs still at 4:00 in the afternoon on a day off playing video games, that's a problem. If you stop training and stop enjoying the things that you normally do, that's a problem. And, to go back to what you said, pick up these books if you're 21 years old. We wrote these books from a position of experience. We didn't read books to write our books. We talked about our lives and things and lived experience. We are from a generation that sucked it up and pressed on, that outran it, that could do all of the things and still juggle everything else. Maybe not well, but we were resilient in the fact that we were durable. And if we can sit there after all these years and say, this is where I went wrong, you will experience these things. Coming from a generation of gray-haired and gray-bearded men and women, we're the generation that chose the hard. We didn't choose the easy way. There's a window that we can open. No, we're going to kick the door. Why? Because kicking the door is rock and roll. That's what cops do. We're going to choose the hard. And if we've chosen the hard and we're taking the time to tell you about it, you should read the book and read the books. Educate yourself. I saw a T-shirt in the grocery store the other day that said, beware of gray-haired men, what was it? Beware of men with gray hair who have done a job where men die young, something like that. And I was like, dude, that gray hair, if you're a first responder or a vet, you may have it at 26 years old.
Right.
That's lived experience. Though that gray hair, those are stripes, badges of honor, and you've earned them. So you should probably listen to the gray-haired people that are walking around still. Yeah, that's good stuff. Now I know the answer to this, but you advocate for officer wellness from the top down. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? And now, before you say this, I know I'm looking at you here. Even your profile picture benches 315 pounds. So you keep yourself in shape. So I know that physical fitness for you is just as important as mental fitness, and they go hand in hand, and we know that. But can you elaborate a little bit on what your experience has been and what you found has worked for you?
Well, I tried a lot of things as we go back to what I talked about before. It's a process. Not one thing is not the same thing is going to work for me, is going to work for you, or is going to work for anyone else. I preface this in the book, and I say this all the time, even in my personal life and to my people. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a professional. Yeah, I got a diploma on my wall that says I got a BS in BS. That's about it. So, but again, how can my first process is I can't ask anything of my people that I don't do myself. How can I train or tell people that I want to promote officer wellness and your mental health and your wellness if I'm not doing it? So if I'm not doing it, then I can't expect anybody else to do it. But to get back to that, it's got to be what works for you, and that's the process that starts. First and foremost, you have to have a mindset, and we've talked about that. Your mindset has to change. You have to want to fix yourself. Nobody can tell you how to do that. Nobody can make you. I liken it to like quitting smoking. People can tell you all you want. You need to do it yourself. And it starts with having a positive mindset about each and every day going, today's going to be better than yesterday. Today I'm going to make this happen. Today I'm going to face whatever it is. Whatever you decided the problem you're going to tackle that day is, make sure you have that mindset. Journaling, as you mentioned, is a big thing. We promote that, and FBI LEADA. I learned that early in my career from FBI LEADA. And that was journaling, because they taught that in your leadership classes way back when I took it in 2013. It's not something that's new, but it's helpful. Mm-hmm. It lets you look back on them things. Now, I wasn't so good at it back then. It took me time to get into that process and have the mindset to do it. Like all this is mindset. You know as well as I do, coming from the background, when you're doing this, whether it's exercise, whether it's journaling, whether it's therapy, whether it's talking to someone on a regular basis, whatever it may be, it all begins there. You have to want to do it every day. Because some days you're not going to want to do it. Just like waking up and getting on the treadmill. If you do that every day before you go to work, some days you're going to be like, oh God, I don't want to get up. But you go.
Those are the days you have to do it.
That's the days you need to do it. And if you can do that, then all of those other things, my life has changed so much in the last year because I kept going. And therapy didn't work for me. It did not work for me. It didn't do me any good. Anxiety pills did not work for me. I'm not a pill guy. I can't take pills. I mean, I tell a story, people laugh at me. I had renal cancer in 2009. I found out I had cancer, and I was living alone, and I was by myself, nobody else to help me. Of course, there was people that kind of checked up on me, but I took care of it myself. And I got home, and they gave me a bottle of Oxycontins. And I got home, and I'm home finally from the hospital, and I take one of them, and it made me feel so messed up, I never took another one. I just dealt with the pain.
You're lucky. In retrospect, you know what that stuff
dealt
does.
with
You're
the pain.
very lucky.
I didn't know what it was, but I've never been my entire life a pill guy. Didn't work for me. It didn't do anything but made me sleep a little bit, and then I'd wake up and I'd still be in the same spot I was in anyway. What changed for me? I met a person who I talk about in the book, my friend Matt Davis, who, as we became better friends and good friends, I knew I could lean on him or talk to him about anything. And this podcast, having the opportunity to talk to you, having the opportunity to run the podcast myself, that is my therapy. I get to talk to people from all over this nation who talk about this and who have dealt with this and who have found ways to cope with the things that they dealt with. Now, they did the same thing that we all did. They're all like we are. They've done this for years and years and years. And then later in life, they finally found something, God bless them, found something that works for them. Whether it be, I have people that I've spoke to that yoga works for them. They do yoga. I just had Matt Slocum on. He does backpacking trips for first responders and takes them out under the stars, and that's what works for him. The biggest thing is you got to find what works for you, and you can't give up. You can't give up, because the first thing is not going to work. The second thing may not work. The third thing, you can't give up. And that's the biggest thing that I can tell people is you're going to want to. You're going to want to, because you're going to feel that it's not working, or I'm just going to be this way for the rest of my life. Let me tell you this, you're not going to be that way for the rest of your life, because when you find it, it's a godsend. Because my whole life has changed in the last 8 months of my life. Better than it's been for the last 20 years.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that.
Yeah, so that's but you gotta be willing to work for it.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to have somebody out there to reach out to, and it's gonna take work, but find them. Get that person and have that person in your life, because you need it. That's the worst thing about us. We never reach out to anybody else. Our position gets smaller. Our group of people gets smaller. Then we have no one till we're down to ourselves, because that's what happens. And then you trust no one.
Yeah. But at that point, we start telling ourselves the things we want to hear. One more drink won't hurt you. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to
One
run
more drink
today.
won't hurt you.
Yeah, you don't have
go
to
out
run
and,
today.
go out, hang out all night and do whatever.
You can maintain. You're all right. You know, I'm glad, going back to your answer there, I'm glad you worked in a plug for Matt Davis. I was trying to figure out how I'm going to work in a Matt Davis plug. I think from here on out, I'm going to have a Matt Davis Easter egg in each one of my episodes at some point, like a sign behind me or something, just to keep you watching.
Well, I can tell you, right behind me is my Matt Davis plug, because Matt Davis, he has I have his coin, which is right here, which it sits here with me all the time, and that's his belief thing, and it's
That's
always
awesome.
with me every day.
Very Ted Lasso of him. I like that.
And yes, he's a big Ted Lasso guy, and he's
Everybody
a big
should
leadership
be.
guy. And I can tell you this podcast we talked about for a long time, and we were out in Fort Collins, Colorado, for an FBI leader thing, and he's from Colorado, so he took the class when I was out there, and we were sitting at a bar at the hotel, and for all you people that says, like, you can still drink, you just don't drink your problems away. So let me preface that.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a little bit, but we're sitting there and we talked about this, and we got it. That's where this was born. And then by June of, it was probably like, let me say May, we were having a conversation, and he's like, dude, what are you waiting for? Just do it. What's the worst that can happen? Here we are in December, and I'm sitting here talking to you, and I've had 17 episodes so far, and things are good. But it's helped me. It's therapy for me. So,
yeah, this is something I never would have done. I figured podcasts is really the new media, and people who are very good at it make it look really easy. It's not, especially for people like us who don't like doing things B+. We have to do it all the way immediately. We've got to have all of the things that day. Like if I'm buying a rifle, it's got to have everything that goes on that rifle. If I'm buying a new tri-bike, it's got to have everything the day that I bring it home. It's a problem for us. If I buy a new book, I've got to have enough stickies laying around just so I can read. So yeah, we don't do that. But what I have found is there are people. I've been told that I have a pleasant voice, and I'm nice. Just recently, this is not something that has been hanging around my neck or a label that floats with me for the last 30 years. But don't generally like meeting and talking to people because I'm suspicious of everybody. I mean, that's just a thing that I think is ingrained in us. Like, what do they want? What do they want
Right.
next? And I found that a lot in the LinkedIn space and the trying to be
Oh, yeah.
an entrepreneur. Yeah, I still kind of have to roll my head and eyes when I refer to myself as an entrepreneur. But I got a business license, so why not?
Yeah.
People, I want to help you with this. I want to help you with that. Well, what is it that you want from me? Because you're not here just because you're interested in me being successful. Having a mentor, that would be awesome. And I love that. And I've actually found by reading books, reaching out to authors, doing this podcast, having these conversations, I'm finding, if not long-term mentors, because I'm still very new at this and I'm just getting started, but I'm finding these casual walk-by mentors. Somebody that comes by and, they say success leaves breadcrumbs. And I heard this from Mike Cirilli, somebody who I follow, listen to, and all that stuff. He's got podcasts and books and all that. But, the people that walk by that drop a breadcrumb for you, that show you the way. And I really enjoy that. And I've found that I'm being enriched by that. And I like being able to then have conversations and do that for others. So I'm blossoming by doing this, and I'm finding a new way to talk to people, and I'm really enjoying this. I would like to, with what you're doing and so many others in this space are doing is get in front of larger audiences and speak and just have a dialogue with folks. That's one of the reasons I love your podcast so much. You just, the DBP, as y'all are calling it now, just having unscripted conversations. I think doing that is, it gets us back to being authentic, saying what's on our mind, not measuring anything to try to be politically correct or not to upset somebody. And I think that resonates with people. And I think we can have even deeper conversations and build relationships and trust. All of that to say this, when you said, to find that person to help you, I was having a conversation with my Matt Davis, but Pete, having a conversation with Pete just the other day that to build a atmosphere of trust, to have people come to you, you have to be worthy of that trust. You have to show that you're able to give that trust and be trusted with something like that, because we all know that with the stigma, as a first responder or a veteran, to take a knee or to raise a hand and ask for help, there could be some backlash, and maybe not institutional backlash, but there can be from peers, subordinates, or superiors. And to take that step is quite a bit of a leap of faith. So you have to be that person. For me, that person was my wife. Obviously, she's my first responder. But as I continue, I'm finding that in other people because we have that shared experience. And from your experiences, and what you're doing with your officers and what you're doing through FBI LEDA, the things that you've learned, what is it that you would recommend from a top-down, bottom-up leadership approach? How would you, say your 6-person department or 60,000 person department? I would imagine that the only difference in what you do is scale. But again, I could be wrong because, I'm not chief. But what would your approach be to getting rid of that stigma, to just to make it safe for people to invest in each other and invest in themselves?
So the hardest part that I think that you hit the nail on the head is that I've had this conversation with a mutual person that we speak to, Vin Scotto, and I'm gonna if I pronounce his last name right. We were having this conversation, and as we build up to this point where our pool of people shrinks down, that you talk about the same thing as we get very suspicious of individuals because it's just ingrained in us. So trying to open that back up is very hard. It's a very tough thing to do. So it kind of reaches down to that thing that's like I put it this way, it's like the the crime boss family. If you want to understand what I'm saying, it's like the Godfather. Like if I'm talking to Doug and me and Doug have had a conversation and I know Doug is good people, well, then I vouch for Doug. So if I'm talking to this other person and they say, "Hey, have you talked this, to Doug?" And I say, "Yeah, I did. Doug and I have had a great conversation, and he's someone who you kind of it starts to kind of. I found that it starts that way, or that's how this has started, because we are very very suspicious of people outside of our circle, and it's because nowadays, let's get it right. We're all suspicious because people are there. It's so much easier to try to take somebody down, or to change whatever with social media, with everything that's out there, with the little snide remarks keyboard warriors can put on the computer or do whatever. So we are very cautious about what we say or do. So the biggest thing that I see is that it has to, starting from the top, is you have to be willing to tell your story to your people. And I think one of those things that happen is when you have an incident like happen that really rocks your agency or your world or people in there, you need to sit in front of your people and take ownership. Just as you take ownership for yourself, you need to take ownership in front of your people. You need to give them permission. And that's what that's about. Giving them permission to seek help, and that it's not going to be something that they're going to be judged by, or that they're not going to lose their job over. Because let's get real. That's what older people who have been doing this job a long time, we know this job has screwed you up. Let's put it that way. You have to realize that. If you're going to tell officers who are veteran officers that they should go speak to someone, or they should go find someone, that's not going to work for them. That is not going to work for them. You need to use the process of letting them know that it's okay, again, to face what they need to face. If they need time off, you need to find it for them somehow. And you need to give them time to go through the same process that you went through. And if you didn't go through it, you damn sure better start looking to go in through it yourself. Because first and foremost, your people are not going to do it. Again, we go back to what we said in the beginning. Your people are not going to do it, and they're not going to do it because you said so. They're going to lead by example, and you have to give them that permission. I had a conversation. You spoke with Jason recently. I spoke with him recently myself, but I also spoke with his co-author, Barbara Rubel, and she's a great person.
Yeah,
she's an amazing person. And one of the things that she says, and she said on my podcast, and it resonates with me every time I think about it, is she talks about an incident where she was on a panel in front of people in the conference. And on the panel with her, it's going to sound like I'm starting out a joke. It's a police chief, it's a fire chief, and a couple other people. So they're on this panel and they're talking about officer wellness. And the fire chief goes into telling these people how he had his struggles and the things that he went through and the things that he did. And then they kind of just went on, and the moderator goes to Barbara, and Barbara looks at them and goes, hold on a minute. Do you realize what just happened? And she's telling them, this fire chief, this leader, in front of this whole bunch of people, just gave everyone permission to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome. Where it starts. And that's where it starts. That's what resonates with me, and that came from her.
It sounds so simple. It really does sound so simple, but then I pose the question back to you. What if the leadership or the person that needs to take that step? We know the culture of organizations begin at the top. That's it. The communication, the organizational culture, it begins at the very top. If you have a person in positional authority that is in charge of changing that culture, and let's just say they haven't done the work, they don't believe they need to do the work, or don't have the character to stand up and, I don't want to say submit themselves to that, but it really is. I mean, you've got to throw it out there, and the thing is, I don't like to use the term vulnerability, even though that's what it is. But when you say vulnerability without context, people look at that as possibly that's weakness. No, it's honesty. It's being able to have a conversation with yourself and see, like we already talked about, where you went wrong, and own that in front of other people, and to be that honest. And I did it for the first time in late June in front of a crowded room of people. I told my story, just brief wave tops. And Man, I walked out of there. It was hard. God, it was so hard. But I felt a euphoria and a power that I had never felt before, because I had people coming up to me, strangers hugging me, shaking my hands. And I understand, I thought it was just me, and just the power of being able to do that and being in positional authority. You have the power, one, but I believe in my leadership experience, you have the absolute the moral imperative for you to stand there and tell your story, and to give others permission to tell theirs, to own your journey, and to make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, or you do the most you can to ensure that your people are whole, that your organization is healthy. And that's a privilege. It's not a burden. That's mandatory. If you can't do that, or you're not capable of doing that, you should not be in a position of authority. I don't believe that you have the character to be able to do that. And I say that harshly, but also I need to say that for years I would have conversations with my squads and my platoons and deputies, and I would tell them it's okay not to be okay. Come to me. We'll help you out. Here's some tough calls that I've been to so I can understand. And they're like, yeah, okay, check, cool. I was the biggest hypocrite in the room for a decade, until I finally had my break and started getting help. I didn't tell anybody I was getting help, but they saw the changes in me. Mm-hmm. And within 2 weeks of my doctor, and if you've read the book, the doc, that part in there, he told me people are going to see that and want a part of it. And within 2 weeks, I was visited by 7 deputies, 5 who did not even work for me. And I shared with them some of the stories. And even as late as yesterday, I heard from a deputy that I worked with years ago that said that he read my book, and just the things that spoke to him, he was saying things to me that he had never uttered, never put words to, and had been holding on to it for 7 and 8 years. I plug this a lot in my podcast and post, but Scott Mann, he's a retired lieutenant colonel. He's written several books. If you go to LinkedIn, you'll see him all over the place, but he did a TED Talk a couple of years ago called The Generosity of Scars. And it's from a section of a play that he wrote and produced called Last Out, the Elegy of a Green Beret. And he talks about scars being, not physical scars, but connective tissue that binds everyone together through their stories. And they people listen to your stories looking for authenticity, to find parts of themselves in your story. And when you own your story and you tell your stories, you are, like you said, giving others permission to do the same. They can relate to that, and they see the power, and they see that you're healing, and they're going to want a part of that. And I think that what you're doing with DeepBlu Project and your book, and what I'm trying to do here, and this mission that so many of us are on, is to really start that conversation, if not force people in positions of influence to take notice and start doing the same themselves. There's so much power in our stories, and there are people out there just waiting, Chris, just waiting to hear a part of your story that they can resonate with. Just like in your book, you walking in circles in your driveway, man, I had to put it down. Damn it, I've been there. I know what he's talking about. And I think that is the power of what we're doing, man. So I don't know. I got off on a tirade. Sometimes I do that.
Nah, you're good. You're good.
So my 3 listeners are going to be upset.
Nah, they won't be. They'll be fine. The hardest part is, I think, that once we talk about this is, when you have this conversation, and this is what I feel, you have this conversation with somebody who's been through it, who has done it. So much resonates with you as you're talking to each other that things just come out. And that's what I think the point. See, initially, there's a book that I tell everybody you need to read, and I got it, and it's right here, and I've read it twice already, and it's called The Courage to Be Disliked.
Heard that on your podcast, and I was running, so I couldn't write it down.
So that book was the very first thing to me that says, the worst thing about us, and the worst thing that we do as human beings, is we are our own worst people. We don't want to be not liked. We don't want to be judged. We judge ourselves. We're so afraid of telling our story because we're afraid of what the other person is going to think about it. Once you get rid of that, and you're able to get rid of that part that your story is your story. Your story is not going to change. I don't care how many times you go talk to anybody, how many times if you get speaking gigs that you get to talk in front of people, your story is your story. It doesn't change. And if you're worried about being judged by it, don't be, because you've already judged yourself for how long until you really realize that I don't need to be judging myself. All of this has been me torturing me. It's not anybody else torturing me. The only time they can torture me is if I let them.
That's very stoic mindset.
They're going to have opinions. Yeah. They're going to think about it. People are going to have opinions whether you've done them right or done them wrong. They don't care. Everybody is not going to like you. I had to learn that very fast.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm a villain in somebody's story.
Yeah, it took me a long time. It took me a long time to learn not everybody is going to like you. So you got to have the courage to be disliked. Be who you are. And realize that the only problems that you have are your own, because you're the ones that make them up. Because once that person's done dealing with you, when they go home, they're not thinking about you again. You're beating yourself up. So I think you make a great point that we can do our things. If you are a leader who's doing what you need to do, people will see the change in you. You don't have to tell them. They're going to see it. They're going to see that you're happier in what you're doing. They're going to see that you're not snapping all the time. They're going to see that your lifestyle is just totally changing because you've made that shift in your life. So and then I think you put it the best way. People will seek you out. People will come to you and tell you their story, and then you will have that opportunity to tell them your story. And they'll say, I knew something was different. I knew something was wrong. And just giving people that opportunity instead of telling them, suck it up and move on and deal with this and deal with it. And I don't care what's going on at your home. I don't care, but you work here. You got to come here and do your job. I don't care what happens outside you. See, that's the mindset that has to change.
Yeah, that's poison.
But when we are having that poison in our life ourselves, we don't realize we're doing that to people. That's where they see the change, because once you realized it and you've cleaned out your mental closet and you're dealing with yourself and you're all about your own mental wellness, you're going to change everything that you do. You got no choice but to help it. And everybody will see it outside of you. I still stumble. I still fall. I still get angry. I still say dumb stuff once in a while. I own up to it. I move on. That's the difference now. I own up to it and I move on. I don't linger over it. I don't beat myself up over it. I don't run away from it anymore. And that's been the biggest change.
Yeah, I say so because it's always going to catch you. Every time you pass a mirror, you're going to see it. That's good stuff. Well, one last question for you, and then I'll ask for parting thoughts. What advice would you give to any first responder, veteran, or even family member that might be struggling with mental health challenges, or just having a hard time? You know, what can we do to better support them? What advice would you give to them?
I think the biggest thing is to know that you're not alone. You are not by yourself. There are so many more people out there who have dealt with or are dealing with what you are dealing with today than you know. You are not by yourself. Please, have the courage, and that's what it takes. You have to have that moment of clarity and courage to reach out and just talk with someone. Start something somewhere. If you can't do it with somebody you know, do it with somebody you don't know. Call Cop Line. Call 988. Call something. Call someone. Once you start that, you'll find that once you open that door, just that little bit, just that little crack, that you're able to just kind of start that conversation flowing, it can be the beginning of everything that you need to help yourself and to changing your mindset. You don't need to flood out with everything. Again, this is not a sprint. It is a journey. It is a long run, and you need to keep at it each and every day. But you need to take that one step, that one little step, and you are not by yourself. Please know this. There's enough of us out here. Doug, is out here doing this every day. He's written his book. You got my book. You got tons of people out there who I'm coming to know as I do this more and more that care and have told their stories so that you know that you are not by yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the, that's fantastic advice. And I think that resonates with me because when I sat down with my Pete, I sat down with Pete and was telling him, hey man, this is what I'm going to do. There's a book. It's a manuscript. And I want to do a podcast to support the book and the book to support that and this. And man, I was physically vibrating. I could feel my body shaking. I was so excited. My voice was cracking. And I said, man, this is what I'm going to talk about. And he's just shaking his head at me the whole time. I'm like, is he in disbelief? And he finally just looked at me when I shut my mouth and he said, man, I thought that was just me. And I'm like, no, dude, we are not that special. We're not that special. I don't care what you tell yourself, what you've been dreaming about or your vitamins. We are not that special. We're all the same. So, Chris, I appreciate your time. It is at the end of your second duty day. We're creeping into family time. So
That's good.
I appreciate you. Where can people find you? I know the answer to that is going to be in the show notes, but I'll let you plug yourself.
So you can find us on DeepBluProject.com, which is DeepBlu is DeepBlu, no E. That messes everybody up. Project.com. I think I got people that tell me that that's a big marketing mistake. I said, well, it's out there. You can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn. The DeepBlu Project podcast is available, on any podcast provider, iHeart, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Doug, thank you very much for what you're doing, man. I'm just getting started with your book because I can tell you this. I know you're finding this out. You write a book and then you get you tie it into people and you start talking to other people that have done it, and you now got all these books to read. And I'm like, I read more books than Matt talks about it in our next podcast. I think I've read more books in the last year than I've read in my life. So.
I've read more
stuff.
books in the last year than I did during my master's.
Yeah, but it's
without a doubt.
But it's great stuff, and it's enjoyable, and like I said, it's an ongoing process. It helps me, and I'm thankful for your podcast and your book and the things that you're doing and the things everybody else is doing. I just want to remind everybody: look, we may not help. We're not going to help everybody, and what resonates with what I say might resonate with you. It might not, but Doug says might resonate with you. It might not. But if it helps one person, great. And if we don't work for you, find somebody who does, please. Find somebody who does, because you're not by yourself. Thank you for your time, Doug. I appreciate being on here, and I thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate it, and we will be in touch. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tell This Story. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Chief Chris Workman. If you'd like to connect with Chris, you can do so by visiting his website at DeepBluProject.com. That's DeepBlu, no E in blue, project.com, or connecting with him on LinkedIn. All the links will be in the show notes below. If you'd enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and leave a rating. Comment and help us spread the word. You can also follow me on LinkedIn under Doug White, Instagram at Tell This Story, Facebook, or even visit my website at DougWhiteOfficial.com. All my links, my link tree, everything will all be there for you. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's constructive feedback, suggested guests, or topics you'd like us to cover. Thank you for tuning in to Tell the Story. We'll see you next time.